Kristen, if you are a Gen Z, which wine would you be drinking out of the four?
I love Gen Z. They're super discoverable. The white category is growing really fast with younger consumers because if you think about what is their food interest, it's Mexican food, it's Thai food, it's sushi. So white wines are pairing very well. But if you look at the reds, I think they would be interested in digging into that more, but they're going to do it on their phone. They're going to Google you, they're going to find you. And so just remember that these are beautiful wines. But if I can't find you and ChatGPT can't tell you about me, then I don't know where you are and I don't think you're going to show up in my world. So just keep that in mind.
Welcome to the Wine to Wine Vinitaly Business Forum 2025 Chicago edition, where global wine professionals share insights, strategies, and inspiration from this year's conference. Let's dive into today's session and explore the ideas shaping the future of wine.
Hello, everybody. We are going to start because we have a competing session which hasn't finished, but you know, in Italian, I always tell everybody this one phrase. It's chi c'è, which means whoever is here is here. So that is the game that we're going to play tonight because this is not your typical masterclass. Usually, a session like this would focus on a guided tasting, which are you used to, and a lot of you are wine experts here today, I see, or a panel discussion. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Let's say it's called the interactive conversation that uses wine as our entry point, but quickly moves beyond the glass into the business, policy, communication, strategies that shape Italian wine's success in America. The U.S. is Italy's largest export market for wine, and I'm going to ask maybe President Zoppas to say something about that. But it is also one of the most complex, and these are challenging times. I think everyone agrees. That's why we brought together a unique panel, consists of one, a legacy importer. You can guess which one it is. It is a game. One portfolio strategist, one policy advisor, and one communication leader to give us a 360-degree view of the U.S. wine market. Okay, are you guys ready? So each panelist has chosen one wine from their portfolio, and these bottles will serve as a starting point, grounding their perspective in a story, and then expanding into a bigger picture of opportunities and challenges. For, of course, we're here at Vinitaly USA, Italian wine in the US. So before we start, first of all, there are no rules, okay? You can taste whatever wine you like whenever you want. There is no order. I think my team did put in some kind of order from left to right is what they suggest. But you can absolutely do whatever you want. Whenever you want. It's kind of the end of the day. If you want to think of it as like an aperitivo, by all means. So I would like to introduce to the audience tonight the godfather of Vinitaly USA. He is a true ambassador for Italian wine for Vinitaly, and he's the president of Italian Trade Agency, President Matteo Zoppas.
Thank you, Stevie. It's my honor to be seated with such, in the good way, monsters of the wine environment and business. In the good way, come si dice monster in English? Monsters, I mean, very big and influential person. So I think that what we are doing with the Italian Trade Agency is that we would like to help you to have an even bigger role in the development of the wine business for Italian wines. So we think that the market is not saturated, that we can go beyond, we can go above what we did till today. And we think that people with your dimension, 360 degrees, it's you are the one that can help really us to develop, promote, and create even a much more important awareness of the Italian wines. We think that is still missing, like create even more values I mean, I know very well Bill because we know each other since very long time, and I know what you're capable of, but I also understand that all of you have a very important role in the U.S. markets, and I think that we have only to take advantage of sitting here with you and learning and understanding and really understanding what could be the leverage for the Italian wine to grow even more. So we will continue with Vinitaly, with Vinitaly USA, with all the activities that Italian Trend Agency is doing to give you the instruments, to give you the floor, and to give you the spaces to help you to do your job, because it's a win-win situation. And so it's a reciprocal interest to work together, and we're here to help you to help us. So thank you very much, and I hope this wine tasting will be the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zoppa. So our first panelist, Bill Terlato, represents one of the great legacy names in the U.S. wine industry. His family has been instrumental in importing, distributing, marketing, and even producing luxury Italian wines for decades. I found out also how he gets his family involved, but that we don't have time for that today, right? Bill, you've chosen a wine to start our conversation. Why this wine, and what story does it tell about Italian wine in America?
So the wine that we chose is Il Pagione. It's the Brunello. This represents our longest tenured relationship. The Franceschi family, we started working with them 48 years ago. And it's our oldest relationship, but now it's also our newest relationship because their children, Leopoldo's son and daughter, started their own brand, Casaccia di Franceschi, and we just started bringing that into the U.S. as well. So we've got both ends of the spectrum. Obviously, Brunello is well-respected wine here. Il Pagione has been a standard for decades, doing very well in the United States. And so I thought, given the history of the relationship, it would be nice to share that wine.
Okay, great. Now, we're going to do all the wines first, so we get that out of the way, okay? So next turn, we turn to Ted Campbell from Winebow. Winebow manages one of the most influential Italian wine portfolios in the U.S., shaping consumer trends across country. Ted, you've also selected a bottle from your portfolio. Can you tell us why you chose this wine and how it reflects Italian wine's success in the U.S. market?
Yeah, I chose the Colimassari Malace, which is their Vermentino. Selfishly, I wanted to show off their new packaging with this vintage, so we were able to do that for the first time. And also, with what we're talking about today, with the Italian wine industry and how to decode it, other whites at this price point are an extremely fast-growing category right now. And so I wanted to share the Vermentino from Tuscany, from Colimassari, with the group.
Thank you. Roger Murry, Senior Policy Advisor at Akin Gump, works closely with the U.S. Wine Trade Alliance and has been a key voice in Washington on trade and regulatory issues affecting wine. Roger, what does it highlight about the policy or market access for Italian producers? Tell us what the wine is.
Yeah, for some reason, someone invited a policy guy to a master wine class. So thank you for having me here. This is probably the only master class on wine I'll ever speak at.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll always be in your chairs from here on out. But
we were desperate, Roger.
Thank you. I can feel it. We've brought a Prosecco DOC, which is a great example of a category that 20 years ago really didn't exist in the U.S. market. And certainly in the last 15 years, it's grown into a category all its own. And it's created an incredible value for restaurants and retailers in the United States. And in Washington, that's the stories that we're telling to show the real Main Street impact of tariffs. And so Prosecco is an integral part of so many Wine by the Glass programs, so please enjoy.
Okay, now finally, let's give it a round of applause for Kristen Reitzell. Okay, so she's of course, we're communications, so of course I have a little bit of more connectivity with Kristen. She's from Jackson's Family Wines and has spent her career shaping brand narratives and connecting wines with U.S. consumers, both established and emerging. Kristen, you brought a bottle to the table as well. So what does this wine symbolize about Italian wine's positioning with U.S. consumers today?
So I brought our Chianti Classico Reserva. Jackson Family Wines is almost 50 years old now, very American, established family company. The family's still very involved. We have 3 generations. But the Barbara Banke and Jess Jackson purchased this property back in 1994. It was about 2,000 acres. There's only about 200 planted vine. And this was the one wine that they consistently made out of the gate, continued to make. They developed the vineyards really around this wine. It's one of the classics. It's a 2020. It was a great vintage. What I love about this is it speaks so much to the estate, which dates back thousands of years and has Etruscan roots. And I think that it's just something that's always been true to that estate. We've gone on to do Cabernet Franc and our own interpretation of kind of a modern interpretation of what we're doing in Tuscany. But I was excited to share this wine because it consistently does very well in the U.S. market. It drives with quality. It has a good story. We don't overcomplicate it. It's like one of our estate offerings. And I think it's, this beautiful Sangiovese that the consumers want that consistency. They want a little bit of storytelling. I think the contextuality around this is what's made it successful in restaurants and retailers since 1994 when we first started producing it.
This wasn't meant to be a blind tasting, but I see, are the wines labeled? All right, so this is an elimination game, okay? If you don't get it right, you get to leave the room. Okay, 2 red wines. One is Brunello and one is Chianti. So raise your hand if you think the first red wine is Brunello. Raise your hand if you think the first wine is Chianti. What about all of those? Raise your hand if you haven't a clue. Be honest. So listen, this is meant to be an interactive masterclass. We don't have that much time. I'm going to start with the first set of questions, and if any of you have questions, raise your hand. If any of you have questions for each other, raise your hand. Okay? All right, I'm going to start off with Bill. Terlato Group has been instrumental in introducing Italian wines to the U.S. What were the pivotal moments that define Italian wine's success story in America?
So we've always felt that wine is driven on a food culture. And years ago, we did not have a strong food culture in the United States, not like there was in Europe. The real pivotal moment for Italian wine, I feel, was in the 80s when Italian wines started to be sold outside of just Italian restaurants. Until then, you would only find Italian wine in Italian restaurants. And we played some role in doing that with Pinot Grigio, because that was the first wine that was positioned in a way that they started to put it on restaurants outside of Italian restaurants, and then closely followed by the Tuscan wines as well, which you have a couple of examples, 3 examples here. And I think that was the real big turning point for that. And it ties into what's happening today, because everyone is concerned about and talking about the downturn in the industry, which we believe is cyclical. We continue to invest. We've invested millions of dollars over the past few years in our different properties and in buying vineyards and wineries. The food culture has never been stronger. And thousands of years ago, they were drinking wine with their meal, and thousands of years from now, they'll be drinking wine with their meals. And you'll have these ebbs and flows that take place in between. Unfortunately, I've probably been around the longest of everyone here on the panel, and I think there's a 10-year cycle that I've seen a number of them that have transpired over the years. And we'll get through it, and you'll see wine on the rise again soon.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before, even with Bill, and I've personally spoken to some of the veteran producers, Italian wine producers, and they echo exactly what you have said. So I think that's very interesting. Okay, my question to Ted Campbell. Mr. Campbell, we'll dive right into the practicalities of it all. Okay, which Italian categories or styles are showing the strongest momentum across Winebow's national footprint?
Well, I think we've got a really good selection here today. Honestly, Prosecco is by far the strongest category with the largest market share. But then we have seen strength with Brunello, which has been performing very well, and Chianti Classico Reserva has done well. One of the reasons I brought the Colomasari Malace Vermentino is because the other category that's doing well is the other whites category. People are looking for substitutes for Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, unoaked white wines. And Italy has them all the way from the north all the way to the south in Sicily, and at a very strong price point in that $15 to $20. And so we're seeing a lot of interest in the other white varietals from Italy in that price point.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Roger Murry, the only oddball who doesn't belong here, by the way, he says. So why don't you just tell us the state of the art of this damn tariff situation? 5 things that we must know, both for the producers and for the wine professionals.
Sure. What's happening today? What matters today? I'd say there's 2 tracks. There's what's happening within your businesses and how you all are, if you're importing or if you're selling to your importer, your pricing, like figuring out pricing, I think at all tiers, at all stages of wine's transit from vineyard to restaurant glass, there's pricing roiling the market. And that process will take, I think, a few more months to work out as the 15% finally makes its way to shops and restaurants across America. And I've have the pleasure of talking to all aspects of the wine industry across the United States. And I think there's so many different strategies that different businesses took when they saw tariffs coming. Many bought ahead, not all could. So it's really interesting hearing how different companies made those different strategies. So I think by probably by January, all of that pricing will have finally reached the customer. Right now we're seeing the beginning of that. And then I think on the policy side, the US and EU have a deal. And what's it worth to us? Not much right now. We know that talks continue at a very low bandwidth. And we know that the European Commission continues to seek a better tariff situation for wine and spirits. I don't know how they plan to get there, and I can't speak to what the European Commission, their timeline and objectives. But I can say in Washington, our goal with the U.S. Wine Trade Alliance is to bring small businesses from around the country, but particularly from red districts and red states, and bring your stories to policymakers to tell them what's on your mind and what do you see coming in the next really 3 months. And we want them to be forewarned that the turmoil in the markets as it relates to tariff is just beginning, and they need to be informed of that. And of course, we hope that they make a better decision. But that's a process that will unfold over many months because there's a lot of people to talk to. And we still don't yet have our full network in place. But one of the reasons I'm here is to meet a lot of people and learn who your U.S. partners are, or if you're an American company, where you operate, what is the state of your company, so that we can find some really good stories. Let's find the best stories and bring them to Washington. That's every day, all day, what I'm thinking about. So very glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. So my question to, of course, it's Kristen's turn. This is everybody's question. Everybody's favorite question at the moment. How do younger U.S. consumers, especially the Gen Z, you can squeeze in the millennials if you'd like, approach wine differently? And what strategies resonate with them, in your opinion, from your work with Jackson?
One important thing to remember, and I'm going to start with this generation, Gen Z, is not to panic. I think we see every generation, there is an article that comes out talking about this generation in its first few years of being of legal drinking age in America, that they're ruining the wine industry. I think Gen X, it was all about microbrews. Millennials were just ruining everything. And now Gen Z just isn't getting on board fast enough or on-ramping fast enough. What's interesting to me is we keep doing this, and I always remind my colleagues, like, don't panic, because just because they come into a category differently doesn't mean they're not coming into this category. And I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity with Gen Z, and I think there's still opportunity with millennials as well as younger Gen X. The one thing I like to tell all producers is that storytelling is still at the heart of a lot of this when it comes to discovery. And Italian wines particularly have these century-old stories, this rich history, this tie to lifestyle, culture, and food, much like many other regions. But Americans love the Italian lifestyle. They aspire for it. I think it's still the largest place outside of the U.S. that Americans aspire to visit. I think Italy is still winning that one. So there's so much opportunity, but you have to tell those stories in a very digestible, contextual, in a way that consumers can really take that in and see what you're doing. And it's less about the wine, and I know it's very hard for us, because it's less about just what's in the glass and it's more about what makes you important to me. Why are you worth my time? And you have to do that in a really digestible way. And the reason I don't like just talking about Gen Z, and I do like talking about millennials with them, is that they're all living on their phones. So the one lovely thing that you have is this digital reach. You don't have to be in a marketplace with them to reach them. They are digesting content across so many different platforms, but all of those platforms are predominantly online. So shepherd your digital presence. Tell those stories in a very digestible, contextual way. Talk more than just the wine. And I think you'll find that, Gen Z is on-ramping into so many different things. They also have more choice than any other generation before them. They're also not price sensitive. I just saw a report from Nielsen recently that Gen Z's spending power is higher than any previous generation at their age. So if you think about it, only 8 years of Gen Z is of legal drinking age. The youngest Gen Z is 12 years old. We're not marketing to that person yet, I hope. Let's give them a couple years to get there. But there's still time, but you have to think about where they are. They're online, they're in a digital format, they're on social media, every generation is. So if you're not looking at your digital presence in the same way you're looking at traditional media or your physical locations of where you're selling your wine, you have to look at it as equally as important. It's how you're gonna reach this consumer. And I will send this report because I'm very encouraged by the way Gen Z views values. They're not as price sensitive as millennials. For those of you that aren't, grew up as a millennial in America, we were all very price sensitive because of this recession that we came into our adult. I see nodding heads. I see many of my fellow poor millennials in the crowd. We're very price sensitive. Gen Z is not. And they are spending at a propensity higher than millennials at their age or Gen X at their age, which is exciting for me because I look at the value Italians wine offer, but they also look at it as a value to them. And so if you make it worth it to them, they will absolutely come along. So buying into their loyalty early is how you will win them for life.
Okay. Are there any Gen Zs in the room? No. Mr. Terlato? No. Okay. Are there any millennials in the room? Okay. What about boomers? Don't be afraid to be a boomer. Come on. Okay. Kristen, if you are a Gen Z, which wine would you be drinking out of the four?
I love Gen Z. They're super discoverable. They're not intimidated because they have information at their fingertips since they were babies. I agree with what you were saying about whites. The white category is growing really fast with younger consumers because if you think about what is their food interest, it's Mexican food, it's Thai food, it's sushi. So white wines are pairing very well. We're seeing that category explode across every region right now. I think they'd also lean into the very traditional, like Prosecco's fun. Everyone loves bubbles. That is blowing up. But if you look at the reds, these are two very classic, traditional Italian wines that most Americans have probably heard of, or at least maybe their parents have drank. And I think they would be interested in digging into that more, but they're gonna do it on their phone. They're gonna Google you, they're gonna find you. So if you're not discoverable online or through social, you don't really exist to them because most of their journeys begin online. And so just remember that these are beautiful wines. But if I can't find you and ChatGPT can't tell you about me, then I don't know where you are and I don't think you're gonna show up in my world. So just keep that in mind.
So, there was this, I don't think he's here, Matteo, Kristen Gedina. Do you guys know who he is? Tell him who he is. Explain who Kristen Gedina is.
Kristen Gedina is a skier, is an athlete that won I don't know how many world championship of ski and downhill. It's like a myth for us in Italy and maybe in Europe as well or worldwide. It was the point of reference for the skis in downhill for decades.
And how old is he? He's not a Gen Z, he's not a millennial.
Is
he a millennial? Maybe. How old is he?
Should be around 50, something
Okay.
like that, I'll tell you.
Yeah, Gen X.
I Googled it.
Okay, so he's a superstar, right? Downhill ski champion for many years. I think he won like 13 championship or whatever. Crazy.
55.
Huh?
55 years.
So his Instagram only has like 35,000 followers. So I was telling him, like, what's up with that? Why do you have like so little followers? He's like, oh, I'm old school. I don't know how to do it, And he has sponsors, like Prosecco. They pay him, right? And he has no followers. So he finally hired an agency to take care of his social media, for example. I just couldn't believe it because he could leverage his fame to really do the outreach, but nobody knows. But we did today something funny. With the help of the special consultant Matteo Zoppas, we did a sabrage with the Platinum American card. So we didn't know how to do it. Actually, Matteo came to rescue because there was I don't know, he was getting into the technicals. He doesn't drink the wine, but he knows something about it. So we did a sabrage. So we're going to my purpose is to make this become viral. Having said that, are there any questions I have thousands of questions. Are there any questions from any of you?
We're a retailer from Missouri. We're Missouri's largest retailer. That's my perspective.
Did you say Zurich?
Missouri.
Oh, yeah, a little bit different. Okay.
Very. Roger, question from the U.S. industry. Are you being helped tell the story about the impact of the tariffs? Or is that mainly a complaint from Europeans?
I think we're doing good work. We're activating large sections of the wine industry across the United States and connecting them with their European producers in ways that help us be effective communicators. And, I think we are directors of marketing with a very, very small audience. There's 535 members of Congress in the House and Senate, and in the White House, there's 5 people that matter. So that's our target audience, and by pulling in good partners from across the country, we are bringing good, constructive stories to them about the state of the market. But the wine industry is so diffuse. There's 200,000 full-service independent restaurants in the United States. There's 6,000 distributors. There's tens of thousands of importers. We just have so much more organization to do, and it just never ends, that's perfectly fine. So we'd love to find more partners, especially in Missouri. There's some key members of your delegation that are not paying enough attention, and we'd like to help them, give them good reasons to pay attention. It's a chaotic world, the environment right now for getting stories in the media, there's a lot pulling attention elsewhere. So we have the assets. Americans love Italian wine. They love their restaurants. I think we got some good ingredients to work with. Okay,
did he answer your question? Satisfied? No.
So are we getting help from distilled spirits makers across the United States? So we work closely with the Distilled Spirits Council. We work closely with the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Association. Francis will be here later tonight. So it is a team effort, and we each have different assets that we bring to this campaign. But I think Washington is well aware of concern. The missing piece is really good stories to tell at the local level.
Okay, any more questions from the audience?
I'll start with Kristen.
I will allow one question.
How can the wine industry do a better job of fighting back against anti-wine, anti-alcohol propaganda in the media?
How can we do a better job?
The wine industry.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah. I was like, just you and me, Gino. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The one thing I keep, when we go through all these challenges, and I will echo what Bill said, is that it's not, the doom and gloom is, I think, very cyclical. And, we were in this boom where we're recalibrating and we're going to level out again. I feel very confident in that. As you can tell by my Gen Z statements, I'm obviously an optimist. And I think it's that, Gino. I think we need to start coming together a little bit more. I really believe in a unified front. I think we're stronger together and working together and having a similar message that we're trying to come out with. I think a lot of the efforts I've seen, with the Wine Institute and, the coming together with Come Over October and different things like that, what it's doing is actually bringing wine together and trying to tell a story and be unified in that. I think in a time where there's a lot of things coming at the wine industry right now, I get asked that all the time, oh my gosh, I'm seeing all these headlines. What's going on in the wine industry? I'm like, it's not just one thing. There's so many things that have come at us in the last several years. And I think we really need to take a deep breath, not panic, come together, actually have a unified message that, wine is different than the other alc-bev categories. We have spirits too, but I do think wine has this cultural relevance, this food, friends, family, this coming together. It's more than just an alcoholic beverage. And the choices out there are immense. And if wine continues to stay united and stop fighting with each other, the competition's somewhere else, you guys. We need to be coming together. And I think the Italian wines, I think one thing, creating these platforms where Italian wine can come together and really have a unified approach, whether it is in DC or whether it's in marketing and communications, but really understand that we're better together and stronger together, especially when complexity is what's probably going to drive consumers away. If they're confused or things are taking too long or we're not able to figure out quickly, they're going to move on to something else. And we really don't want them to. We want them to stay with wine. When they reach for alcohol, I want them to reach for wine first And then we can get into what wine that was. If it was an Italian wine, amazing. Is it a Prosecco? Great. Hopefully they go for the Chianti or the Brunello next time. But it starts their journey and it starts their discovery. And if they like it, they're gonna look for more. And I think that's where it starts. It starts with all of us wanting them to reach for wine. And then of course for us, Italian wine.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
And unfortunately, I'm going to date myself a little bit with this.
Yeah, we know you're a boomer. Don't worry, Bill.
But when I
secret's
started
out.
when I started in the industry, there were 3 wines that were on every wine list of every restaurant that I called on as a sales rep: Lancers, Mateus, and Blue Nun. And in a period of 3 or 4 years, they went from being on every restaurant wine list to being on no restaurant wine lists. There were wines that did millions of cases. Does anybody remember Lambrusco? Millions of cases. Does anyone remember California Cooler? Millions of cases. Now what we're seeing today is that same thing play out. Tens of millions of cases of RTDs that are out there that 10 or 15 years from now, we'll be talking about those products like California Cooler, like Lambrusco. The people are going to graduate to something else. They're not going to drink those wines with a meal in a fine restaurant. So they're taking up space now. They're taking up space on retail shelves, their share of stomach with the consumers that are out there. But those products are going to have their moment in the sun. The life cycle of a product, usually the rate of descent is matched by the rate of ascent. So when it becomes an overnight hottest thing, it goes away just as quickly. And that'll go away and it'll be replaced by something else. But again, these products that have been around for thousands of years, they're not going anywhere. There's going to be plenty of opportunity.
Okay, so I'm going to have to close, but I have one question for everybody except Roger. I have a special question for you. So for everybody, okay, the last question is, how do you see as the biggest opportunities and biggest risk for Italian producers to be prepared for now and within 5 to 10 years? Let's start from Ted.
The biggest opportunity is exactly what we've been talking about today: communication, storytelling. Italian wineries have an amazing story to tell, and if they can share that with the Gen X and millennials, then they'll get their business. The biggest risk is lack of focus. I really think that the wineries need to be very focused on what they do well and try not to do too many things. And if they can be very focused on what they do well and communicate that to the consumer, then they'll be successful.
Kristen?
I think the biggest risk, not to start with the negative, is just complacency and just sort of this resting on our laurels and buying into the negative. I think if we allow that to take over and paralyze us, then a lack of action, I think, around continuing to do what we do. And I think there is staying power in this industry, and just remember that. Be an optimist and kind of rewrite that mindset. I think the biggest opportunity is focus. I agree with that. I think the coming together, more unified message, and really focusing on like what you are. Don't try to be everything to everyone, but tell a story, tell a consistent one, tell a digestible one, and tell it in a lot of places, because consumers, they're digesting information in so many places, and you really do have to try to be everywhere. But if it's not overwhelming if you're consistent with what you're telling them.
So the marketplace is becoming global. We're in an information age where it's easy to get information. You can find out what's going on in Australia by getting on your phone in the next couple of seconds. I think one of the biggest things that people have to think about is when you're thinking about your product. Years ago, if someone produced and they were from a certain region, they compared their product to the other producers that were in that region. Today, if you're going to have a $25 bottle of wine, you're competing against all the other options at $25 that people can choose from anywhere. And you have to be able to answer the question, why should someone drink this wine instead of that wine? And that's not an easy question to answer. You have to be differentiated. You have to have a story. History helps even more. Indigenous grape varieties that aren't sold in other places, I think, is one of the biggest strengths for Italy, focusing on indigenous grape varieties instead of international grape varieties. But there's plenty of opportunity out there, and it's just the people that we work with, we force them to give us the tools that we need to be able to differentiate their products from everything else that's in the market.
Okay, very good, Bill. Now to Roger. How can Italian trade agency best support Italian producers to adapt and thrive in the evolving U.S. wine landscape?
I'll stick to the near term, stick to what I know. The task at hand is to connect your producers all the way through to their accounts at the other end of the distribution chain, restaurants and shops. I'd like for them to identify the best stories from their accounts and help us tell that story in Washington. Italian winemakers create incredible amounts of revenue in the United States that stays in the United States. Every $10 of Italian wine sold at a restaurant in the United States, 9 of those dollars stays in the United States, goes to American companies. We only send $1 back for every 10 that an American restaurant customer spends on Italian wine. Americans are really good at making money off of your wine. I want your help finding the very best stories there. And this is pride of place, the best Italian restaurants, multi-generational restaurants, the most creative restaurants in a small town. I want to combine these stories together, and I think that's a winning formula to get tariffs off our back.
Okay, and that's it, folks. Let's give it up for the Fantastic Four. Roger Murry, Bill Terlato, Kristen Reitzell, Ted Campbell, and Mr. Zopas.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.